Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere, appreciate it. Today we're continuing on with part 2, continuing from last night's discussion, deep talk, latest research on the Dylan Rounds case, more so the backstory of Dylan Rounds before going missing. Today I want to share my thoughts, opinions and theories around Dylan Rounds and Candace Cooley to try and make better sense of things, okay? We're going to be looking at the theory of Dylan Rounds keeping secrets, hiding it from people such as family, maybe friends, and then the other theory of Candace Cooley holding secrets, which Dylan Rounds got himself involved in, and Candace hasn't been fully transparent within the Dylan Rounds case, for whatever reason that may be. We're going to look at different areas there, right? So make sure to stick around from start to end to really understand what we're talking about today. And if you haven't already, make sure to catch up on my previous video, which I did last night. A link will be provided down below in the pinned comment section, okay? Also, I will be responding back to Ty Corbin today, so make sure to be on the lookout for that. Though, to begin with, we probably should start with the comments of last night, answer any questions, see if there's any additional information, and then we can go from there. As I said, be sure to interact, share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box on the right hand side, okay? It appeared that the live chat froze once again last night, refreshed it a couple of times and then it fixed it. I did reach out to YouTube support, Google support for advice for a fix. They demanded that I provide them screenshots, but how is one supposed to provide screenshots the following day when it wasn't done at the time? And at the time it was a live chat. You can't recreate it afterwards. Whatever happened live happened, it doesn't show afterwards. So basically YouTube support said, oh, there's not much we can do at this moment. The person's called Reinhardt, probably from Germany. Pretty much a useless, incompetent individual, pathetic excuse of a human, to be honest. What's the point being part of the Google support team or the YouTube support team if you can't actually provide support? Useless. You know, several times now I find myself thinking, who's really the expert here? Are you supposed to be an expert? How the hell did you get appointed to that role if you can't even get your job done correctly? Pathetic, okay? So that pretty much sums that up, okay? Let's just get right into the comments now and start off. Here we are, just adjust it, newest, start from the bottom, haven't got too many to get through. First of all, nothing compares. Shout out to them for recently watching my videos. Not sure when they came across the channel, but it's good. They're listening in. And speaking of listening, it was a fair range of people last night watching, I guess, and listening. There's only so much going on in the live chat and only so much going on in the live polls, the voting. So you'd assume that the majority of people, the remainders who, were present, were simply watching, and that's also good. Taking it all in without being distracted, right? There's my comment, part 2 follows soon. Cleo can't wait. Org, been busy last few days, so been watching on replay lately. Hopefully see you in chat tomorrow, maybe, yeah. Kim, trying to help the algorithm by adding comments here too. I don't know if the thumbs up likes help, but we will keep trying to help where we can. Another enjoyable live video. So it's good that Kim enjoyed the video too. That's all good. Yeah, as for the algorithm, I don't think about it too much. I try not to talk about it much at all. But yeah, by liking videos, that extensively helps the algorithm. Basically, the short story is the more people who interact with a particular video, so watching the full length of a video, liking the video, possibly sharing it to other people and leaving a comment down below. All 4 methods, if all done together, will obviously, alert YouTube, and YouTube will see there's high levels of interaction on this particular video, so it must be a good thing, and then they push it to the front page or so. That's kind of like how it works, okay? We got Without Limits saying, I thought the old interviews would be interesting to listen to within the context of what we now know today. This is an odd one that Candace Cooley did with Sleuth Mom, dated June 13th, 2022. The video is divided into chapters, so it is easy to skip to different topics on the investigation. Okay, it's interesting that it's divided into chapters. I'm not going to click on it here because obviously copyright, but when you say it's in chapters, do you literally mean the video has been edited into chapters, or are you referring to the YouTube chapter system in which when you go on the playback button and you drag across to fast forward ahead, it gives like markers of which topic you're talking about at that point? I think YouTube might auto-generate that. Maybe you can add it in yourself. It's a newer feature, isn't it? Okay, so we've got some comments there by Tom and Cleo. Cleo, great one, thanks. Good to hear. You're welcome. Badger, unfortunately, he had a mouth on him. Who? Are you talking about Badger Life? Let me know. Ty Corbin's comment there, which we'll refer to in a second. Beatrice saying, finally, I can see the comment section and make a comment. Another good video, as always. Now I'm thinking Dylan was shot at close range in order for JB to have that much blood on him. You never know. It's a fair point. The alternative would be that Brenner was up close with Dylan, dragging Dylan across the floor, right, to move him about, maybe dispose at the same time. But it's good that Beatrice can finally see the comment section once again. Very weird, right? But there are so many issues going on YouTube that maybe YouTube themselves are overloaded. You know, all kinds of stuff going wrong, which isn't good. Obviously, if you're a content creator. Iceberg, shout out to Iceberg. Very good of them with the super chat. It's good to see Iceberg back once again. Okay. Jack Klein saying, I did mention a few months back about Dylan's mother. Not sure when Dylan went to live with Justin's grandparents. The mother had several partners, but the relationships ended over money she owed some of her partners. I don't think Dylan saw much of his mother after he left her home. The person I heard this from didn't say any more. Right. I understand Cooley has a record, but don't know what names they would be under. I'm not able to access the court records. Okay, interesting comment there. Anyone in the chat, feel free to react to. Is it 100% true this? Can you add on with your own information? Feel free to do so. What else do we have? Indiana. Okay, short one. Saying Candace is like a curse to all her partners. She seems to bleed them all dry financially and leaves them in debt. She also leaves a financial trail of debt herself with a recent case against her only just lately. It makes you wonder the effect this had on Dylan's thinking over the years and his own financial dealings. Yeah, I guess it all does come down to, was Dylan Rounds around Candace Cooley enough to then internalise and even witness at the hands of what Candace Cooley was getting up to in the past. If that really was the case, Dylan Rounds could have been inspired, just influenced naturally from observing, growing up at a young age, seeing it, right? Different ways you can look at that. Do we do a poll? You know what? Screw this. We'll do a poll right now. Make sure to vote. The poll can be, with what we've heard about Candace Cooley and financial problems and trouble, etc., do you think at any point was Dylan Rounds influenced by Candace Cooley's dark past? Yes. No. The other option being no, because Candace Cooley has never done anything wrong. And then another option as well. Feel free to vote. It'll be interesting to see what people think. Again, click that off. What else do we have? Indiana. Whoa, hold on. Unbelievable, isn't it? When you see all the custom work Dylan did, just 19 years old, not only the work he did, but overseeing the workers that worked alongside with him, moving from one farm to another, on his last leg of getting his own land set up to grow his own crop, a later photo of his grown hair under his cap, losing weight, muck on his face, grinning, eating a burger. He was growing into I've never heard that word used before, young man, and as time went on, pretty rich man, sadly taken far too soon. As said, possibilities of Dylan being busy at the time, the age he was, but I believe would have had some form of energy, right, with being younger. But did he ever overwork himself, which could have led to him being a bit ill at times, right? The thing is, and maybe we can talk about it more, but I'll just raise the point now. The fact that Dylan being very busy and overworking himself may have not directly led to his death, but it could have led to him being more vulnerable at the time when he was going to be taken out by Brenner, right? If you think about it in a sense, if you've got someone who's very active, alert and strong, they might be able to defend themselves better, right? And could be a success. If you've got someone who's drained, tired, they've been busy, gone to sleep, gone to bed late, not really working out there, maybe not healthy either physically and inside, and then comes a time where you got to defend yourself, do you have the energy to do that? You might try, but probably not much of a success. So you got to take that little factor into mind as well. I mean, at the end of the day, if you are on the other side staring down a barrel looking through it, you probably can't really avoid it, if you're just stood there and they're pointing it at you, or if it's a surprise ambush attack, but you got to look at it from all these different angles, okay? Now, before we move on, obviously we need to look back at Ty Corbin's comment. Right, so one thing just to highlight first of all, okay, because I know a few people, well, a couple last night were wondering, Ty Corbin, who is Ty Corbin? Is this the real Ty Corbin, or is it another fake account? Well, don't worry, hold on. If I click this here, Ty Corbin, 900 subscribers, a lot of different comments there. Warlike Raff, watch Johnny Yarborough's show from last night. Lance is now exposed and whatever. I think you've got those wipes figured out. Good job. Right. I never thought it was right. Zavgo. Okay, so it's not going to load. Being a right little knob. There we go. You see Ty Corbin's channel. You see Ty Corbin there. His short videos, his normal videos, etc. So can confirm this is the real Ty Corbin and the real Ty Corbin from last night, in case you're wondering again. So Ty Corbin's comment reads, you tell people to do research when your research is watching what people say in chat. Did you ever get a police report? No. Have you ever been to Montello once? No. More like wimp, like waffle or waffer. Where's Mr. Sam Froto? You lost my support. Right. Where do we go from here? Well, first of all, everybody in the chat, make sure you're listening right now. Make sure you're focused right now, because I need to respond back to this. So make sure you're listening. As for the response, Christy, what was your last straw exactly? Okay. Well, I think it's probably just because of last night, but that can be cleared up in a second. So, is everybody in the chat focusing right now? So, basically, Ty Corbin says, did I ever get a police report? No. I might have not got a police report, but at least I don't have a mugshot photo either. Do you? Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah. Anything else? Have you ever been to Montello once? No. Yeah, I've made some form of contact with Montello locals in a natural way when Montello locals reached out to me and I didn't have to desperately scuttle around for them. So it was all natural. It wasn't forced. When you got the likes of Salty Pancakes out there interrogating people and pushing some, such as Weezer, all it does, it pushes them away and you're less likely to get answers. The concept, the foundations of my structuring and videos is I cover what I cover, I share my thoughts, try and make sense of it, think outside of the box, keep it alive, and then eventually, right place, right time, right individuals, possibly right resources or information, come on in, share their side of the story, and then share it with everybody else, analyse, and then move on from there. All under control, Ty Corbin. I've extensively done this in the past with the Kenny Veach case. It happened there as well. So I followed the same structure with time, and obviously it works, okay? You know, the reality is you've got to think of time efficiency as well and practicalness in general, okay? You've got people on a battlefield, front line, boots on ground, going through some of the roughest stages, physically demanding, mentally wearing, you know, it's just full on, right? Action takes place there. That's kind of like what Ty Corbin has done, what Lance Kelly has done, and a few others here and there, hiking about, searching for Dylan, as well as trying to find answers and maybe interviewing the odd few people, right? But then, behind, you know, the boots on ground, you got the people either from above, in the air, the sky, or further away on land, headquarters, the base, where other operations are taking place, the intel, the reconnaissance, the scouting, okay, the planning behind the screen, which also plays a pivotal, vital, important role too, which can assist and aid the people on the front line and vice versa. That's kind of like how it works with YouTube coverage or online social media coverage, spreading awareness there, getting the message out, letting other people know, bringing in the right people or encouraging people to speak up, whilst the boots on ground do what they do, such as Ty Corbin. So I think that seems to be forgotten about and lost in all the words here, which is unfortunate, but not really a surprise, okay? So Ty Corbin resorting to nicknames, in a sense, messing about, fair enough. Ty Corbin says, "You lost my support." Now, I'll be honest with you, I never thought that Ty Corbin supported me in the first place, okay? So it's not the end of the world. It's not a complete loss, okay? It is what it is. Because as you know, with time, Ty Corbin has popped in and out. Sometimes he's complained and moaned, other times he's apologised, then he's been okay, then he's complained, moaned, then maybe apologised. And it's basically on repeat, like a cycle of a washing machine, okay? But there's no, you know, deterrent or powder used to clean up the clothes, okay? So, let's add on with this with my further additional thoughts, okay? So tying all this up with Ty Corbin, no pun intended there, originating from last night being the catalyst because of referring back to the 25th of May 2022 with Dylan Rounds and coming across Chase Venstra supposedly for the first time down Tacoma Road. There were some details mentioned. Of course, it was in brief, somewhat short, because it was a part of a greater, bigger video. If you wanted the full story and the full additional details and how things followed out, there is a previous video in the past, but obviously if people don't check that, then they're going to complain when they see this recent video. That isn't my problem. That's just simply impetuous behaviour and not being consistent and failing to learn the previous stuff that's been covered, okay? So there's that first of all. But as for last night, Ty Corbin, first of all, basically saying this was wrong and that wasn't right and that's BS. Where did it originate from? Well, from what Weezer said. Montello local. Pretty much like that. So from Ty Corbin's response, it's highlighting and insinuating that Ty Corbin is calling Weezer a liar, saying that Weezer is spreading BS. That's how you can interpret it from what Ty Corbin was saying, okay? Now, referring back to the comment on YouTube in the comment section before where Ty Corbin was saying how when research is done, all you do is look at the chat and then make a video about it. Well, once again, Ty Corbin, you say that, you know, you've lost my support, but were you there to begin with to actually follow and listen and learn about my videos and coverage, when the reality is, and the fact is, that quite a few of my videos haven't been looking at comments in the chat, okay? They've actually been elsewhere, other platforms, one-on-one basis, okay? That's what's happened, and then shared it on. There's been times where I could just sit here and relay it with my mouth, so then it doesn't appear as if I'm looking at a chat or referring back to it, and then it gets misunderstood. But the reason why I show screenshots, okay, almost from the horse's mouth, whilst blurring out maybe the username just for respect of one's privacy, which other people have failed to respect down the line, as we know. But, you know, just as a form of a bit more rawness, okay, so it's a bit more natural. You're hearing it from them, even if there's spelling, you know, mistakes made, it's coming from them directly and it's being passed on. It's basically the equivalent of if you did a live stream, live call-in, and then you invited a guest on and then they spoke, right? In this format, it's just the text-based equivalent, kind of the same thing, right? So that's why it's done that. So when Ty Corbin is claiming that all the research I do is just from simply looking at comments in the chat, is once again incorrect, okay? Just remember one thing, Ty Corbin. Maybe you never thought about it in the first place with being a bit impetuous at times, and it can apply to other humans out there as well. But the reality is I've uploaded 342 videos on the Dylan Rounds case, more than what anyone else has ever done before, okay? That's a fact. I've covered it almost every single day, which most people haven't been able to do. That's a fact, okay? I've been more consistent, more frequent than most humans out there. That's a fact, okay? In terms of the coverage, in terms of the research, right? Sometimes it's not always about the research, just simply looking at it visually, such as on the maps, measuring the distance of locations, right? At the times where videos have been done in response or spreading awareness with you, Ty Corbin, such as locations, places of interest, as you remember, or as you should remember, was that the usage of looking at comments directly and only? Not so much. It was applying it visually on Google Earth too, using markers, beacons, measuring distance, stuff which you acknowledged yourself, okay? So you had that unique format. You had the unique format as structure of looking at footage, okay, from other people, whilst also crediting them in the comment section, the description, etc., and even crediting their names till this day, even if they have acted like a knob at times, right? To maintain that level of consistency and frequency, okay? So we've looked at footage, we've reviewed it, analysed it, compared, contrasted, looked at photos as well, looked at news articles, news reports, interviews, structured them, analysed them, summarised them, right? I've done a lot of different coverage, different forms of research, some visual, or mostly visual, and then others text-based, okay? Very simple. In terms of the palette, my coverage, my style, the palette is much wider than most channels out there, okay? That's a fact as well. Here's why it is. So, referring back to Ty Corbin criticising me for supposedly only doing research based on text, comments and replies in the chat, obviously that's wrong. Ty Corbin being impetuous once again. But also, it's interesting he says what he says in regards to the stuff about Weezer's comments. When does Ty Corbin have an issue? Does he highlight it upon himself when he himself, who's reached out with information or clearing up stuff or wanting a message to be passed on, it was within the comments themselves? So whilst Ty Corbin is, you know, kind of criticising my only supposed research by looking at comments, what about the videos I've done in response or in addition to him by spreading awareness about something which he's thanked me for later on, and it all entailed and begun with looking at comments in the chat or in the comment section to begin with. So he's calling out other people or calling out me for research to do with other people with comments down below, but when it's applied back onto him, that doesn't seem to be acknowledged here. That seems a little bit one-sided, a little bit hypocritical. There we go, once again, hypocrisy showing within humans, no surprise there, okay? It's very simple as. So, yeah, I think the other thing what we need to acknowledge as well, when it comes to Ty Corbin, okay, and this is more from an outside perspective, okay, just listen to me, Ty Corbin, understand the language and wording, okay? When it comes to humans in general, majority of people that watch my videos are from the US or the UK, maybe Australia or Canada. They're like the top ones, okay, most of the time. And I think most of those people speak English, understand English. It might be their first language. But I think what we're seeing now, or more so now, people who may understand and speak English, but at the same time their vocabulary is lacking, their understanding is lacking, and that impetuism is showing on display. Very unfortunate situation, okay? Impetuous humans won't do well around an individual with multiple different perspectives and points of view. It's like a cluster F in their mindset and they just can't comprehend it, okay? But I'll do my best right now to make sense so you can understand it better, okay? So when it comes to other people's mindsets and how they've labelled Ty Corbin, it's not always been positive. People calling out Ty Corbin for being a bit of an arse licker when it comes to the likes of Jim Terry, right? Looking up to him like a little daddy master or something, okay? That's what other people have called out with time, and a range of people have done that. Now, that's not going to impact Ty Corbin. He wouldn't care about it, but that's the perspective of other people out there where they understand and come to that conclusion that because Ty Corbin associates with Jim Terry, that's bad news, probably misinformation, spreading BS, passing it on to the likes of Bob Farrell, who then spread his more BS, and then Ty Corbin himself involved himself in the middle of it, and it just caused a lot of disruption, a lot of noise, a lot of supposed events and rumours which turn out to be absolutely nothing and not relevant to the Dylan Rounds case. That's what other people have said. That's what supposedly other people have witnessed when it comes to Ty Corbin, the Jim Terry triangulation connection, and maybe Bob Farrell too. Triangulation of disaster, you could interpret that way. But from my perspective, at least, it wouldn't surprise me if that has happened. But at the same time, it's not just with that area. You can apply it to Salty Pancakes and some of his people and audience and guest invited on there. It has been a bit of a mess, right? But the reality is things have quietened down ever since, mainly because most of these channels have moved away. So they might be causing mass disruption elsewhere, but not here. Can actually breathe for once. What I would say from my own observations is the position I'm in right now is kind of like the Kenny Veach case, where there's not really many or any covering it right here, right now, besides me. So there's more time to think, more space to branch out, and for other people to do the same. And there's only like one or two people covering it at the moment in time. The concentration is focused there. So the contacts with time who may have been elsewhere have branched away and realised, oh, this is the only beacon still remaining, so let's come on down and then go from there. And it's not a matter of interrogating people, and it's not a matter of inviting people like all in one go and then all noises going about. No, it's one-on-one, slowed down pace, no rushing, okay? I know some people could criticise and say, well, you should be going fast, you should be going out hard, this is a case, person missing out there. Well, if you're directly involved in the case, like really involved and really connected to the family, maybe you need to be very active and much faster. But because there are things going underway and somewhat under control out there, the people who are lower down on the hierarchy, they can go at a slower rate, okay? And by going slower, you can comb over things, you can pick up on stuff other people wouldn't because they're zooming ahead like a rat race, okay? I mean, that's what it is, like a microcosm rat race, right, on YouTube. It's just how it's gone. But more time to think, okay? So, linking back to Ty Corbin, okay, with the odd few labels and criticisms made by him with time, it's not the first time he's done it, okay? In the past, Ty Corbin did come on, complain, whinge, whine, that time on the odd occasion or so where he Ty Corbin falsely accused my channel of clickbaiting people, clickbaiting titles in my videos, etc. But he failed to understand vocabulary, wording, language used, being specific, both title and how I word stuff in the video. Eventually he apologised, but still it happened. He made false accusations, quite serious, could be damaging in the long run, right? Ty Corbin isn't the only one to do it. Buster Bratamus did as well at that time, got the tail in a twist. And, a few other people as well, let's not forget, a few other people down the line no name channels, default profiles have complained, whinged and whined themselves. Just all down to misunderstanding the language. It's as simple as that, okay? But to put the spin on things from the perspective of what other people have said with time, when it's come to Ty Corbin's own videos of finding stuff potentially, passing on information around the finding of that baseball cap, also known as a hat, a cap, a John Deere branded one, right? And then some of the findings previous to that back then, with or without Lance Kelly, before one gets triggered there. Other people out there, okay, general public viewers, okay, from Ty's place, more so from further afar, have come on in, okay, may have left some comments here, but also elsewhere, mainly in response to the findings by Ty Corbin, and labelled Ty Corbin as clickbaiting, causing disruption, spreading a lot of BS, you know, trying to change the narrative, twist it in a certain direction, manipulation, etc. That's what people have said about Ty Corbin. Now, did I jump onto that bandwagon? No. When it came to covering some of his videos, giving my thoughts, my opinions, it was either reinforcing it. Was it about debunking it? I can't remember if that did happen, but at least when it came to the moments of uncertainty, I looked at for and against arguments with his own findings. I didn't go down the deep end and just go one-sided on him. That never happened. Thing is with Ty Corbin fails to display balance, though I demonstrate balance at times, or for as most part of it as I can do my best. So, not on the same level, okay? Not on the same level, so that's probably where the fragmentation begins, and from there on, it's like a slippery slope, okay? So, that's my thoughts, that's my response regarding Ty Corbin. At the end of the day, Ty Corbin being a local out there who will know a fair bit, done his own stuff, boots on ground, yes, but as well, other things and other formats can be complemented at the same time, or enhance, okay, bounce off from one another at times, but obviously don't always work, such as here, okay? So, Weezer, let me know your thoughts down below, of course. What do you think about all this? What else was there? Now, a few comments were like, oh, we should be really grateful for these people. Well, first of all, you acknowledge these individuals like Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, regardless of what other people will say. Salty Pancakes at a point in time, short term, okay? And maybe a few others in between. It's good what they've done, but there's been actions, there's been times and moments where they may have unravelled stuff because of their attitudes and behaviours and certain actions displayed at points in time. You got to acknowledge that as well. And whilst you can also acknowledge all these people for the research they've done or the physical effort they've put in, you don't have to be an arse licker or bend over backwards at the same time. You can acknowledge people, but you don't have to get too submissive, okay? And I think some people might be getting a little bit too submissive at times, so try and keep things under control, if that's possible, right? Was there anything else to acknowledge or highlight? I mean, you might get resistance here and there. Oh well, you probably get some of the bitch boy posse group coming on in here and there too. It is what it is. It's happened before, right? Is there anything else to highlight? Well, just as a random observation, aside from Ty Corbin and aside from other people, when it comes to, you know, statistically speaking, I've come to a bit of a conclusion, okay, about 40 to 50 people regularly, that's very good and very consistent of individuals when following the Dylan Rounds case. When I'm not talking about the Dylan Rounds case, but I might be referring to a key individual, as you will know, it will go from maybe 40, 50 to about 60, 70, maybe 80. If I'm talking about the Dylan Rounds case and on top a particular name, it could be 70 to pushing it 100, okay? So you see the patterns there. But I think what we can come to a conclusion with is about 20 to 30 people, whether it be the same lot or random people at times, about 20 to 30 individuals out there that come in every now and then when it's mentioned about a named individual. Clearly shows that 20 to 30 people probably aren't as focused on the Dylan Rounds case, maybe not caring about it. You know, get what I'm saying? I know a few people here and there have said how there's some characters and some names in the chat who all they ever do is mess about and not even talk about the case and just talk about anything else besides it, which isn't really helpful. I mean, you know, I guess it's just one of those things that is what it is. It's good for people to stick around. I mean, the one thing I can acknowledge is when I do videos like this, which are obviously important and require some focus, if I detach away and then I upload a completely different video, completely unrelated, the regulars probably stick around. The overflow of people probably won't because it's not on that theme and topic they're interested in. But the individuals that could be labelled as potential troublemakers at times, potentially naughty individuals at times, and talk about everything besides the case, they still tag along too, which shows a consistency in sticking around, right? So you need to, well, not you yourself because you're just a viewer, but I can acknowledge it myself with some people sticking about, okay? So I think that clears everything up there. What we are going to do now is transition on into the theories, ideas and concepts, okay? When it comes to this, I don't know how deep we will get, okay? See what we can do and try and tie it in from last night, okay? And you can share your thoughts, opinions, reactions down below, okay? So, who should we start off with first? Let's just start off with Dylan Rounds, okay? Recent time, we've heard about his past with his custom farm work. Contracts, busy, going about to different places, ordering parts, moving about. Pretty active, right? With a workload like that, lack of work-life balance, determination, focus, some people could highlight as possibly unhealthy, possibly leading to him being a bit ill. To what severity, I don't know. But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me, okay? Sometimes if you are really busy working, but not, well, you can't say about exercise because Dylan Rounds is doing exercise, physical work like that, farming, so that's not an issue. But I guess if you're working hard and long hours, not getting enough sleep and maybe not eating enough food, something like that, it can lead to an imbalance there, a little bit unhealthy, longer term, becoming a bit ill in some way or another. Candace Cooley has never really referred to Dylan being ill or ill at the time of his disappearance. But once again, it all comes down to, did Candace Cooley know, or was Dylan Rounds keeping secrets? Okay, and that's what the theme is of this theory. That being, did Dylan Rounds keep secrets, hiding them away from the likes of Candace Cooley, maybe Justin Rounds, whether it be his physical, psychological health, his work balance, work life, his financial issues, potential issues, let's say, and so on, okay? You also got to take in mind the extent and role Candace Cooley played in Dylan Rounds' life. Like how we said earlier on in this video, the early days, Dylan growing up, if Candace Cooley, okay, because I don't want to go too down deep or all in a certain way, as you'll understand. If Candace Cooley did get in trouble financially, potentially screwing other people over, owing other individuals money, exploiting certain things, and benefiting in some way, if Dylan Rounds was present, witnessing it at a young age, it could have been installed in her, right, with time, influenced, natural process, maybe hard to shake off, seen as normal behaviour at the time if that was Dylan Rounds' environment, let's just say, if that was the case. Fast forward to later on, if Dylan Rounds owed this person money, that person money, tying it in with being ambitious, maybe over-ambitious, reaching a longer-term goal ahead, jumping ahead, rushing slightly, which leads to things being neglected along the way, cost of equipment, cost of resources, catching up with him down the line, which he may not anticipate at the time, right? There's one way of looking at it, okay? Would Candace Cooley have known about all these issues Dylan Rounds was facing? Well, it seems like she doesn't know about all that. And you could say, well, how does it come to such a situation where people on the internet seem to know more about Dylan Round's life than Dylan's parents do? How does that make sense? Normally, it wouldn't. But if Candace Cooley, Justin Rounds been away from Dylan because of where they live and separated apart, and Dylan Rounds doing his own thing, and with Candace Cooley saying that Dylan Rounds didn't visit much because he was like during special times of events, he wasn't around all the time, and when he did visit, come on down for these family events, it was short term. He wasn't hanging around long enough, right? So with being away, conversations reduced in a sense. Distance physically, okay? Still phone calls being made, but that one-on-one interaction not quite being there because Dylan doing his own thing. So with a cut back in interactions with time, less conversations, shortened text, calls made, right? The family hear less of Dylan or don't know as much as what's going on. The times when they do find out is when Dylan himself actually makes a call and tells them about it. Just like 25th of May where Dylan made a call to Candace Cooley, okay? Recalling how the tale of events unfolded with coming across that crazy guy known as Chase Venstra at the time, 25th of May 2022. Candace Cooley obviously told us about it after Dylan going missing and the case being underway, but also Candace Cooley did word it as that. Well, how did she word it? She worded it on behalf of Dylan? Yeah, it was more worded on behalf of Dylan because Dylan didn't actually say it at the time. Reality was, from what Candace Cooley had said, because she did eventually find out one way or another. In one of the East Idaho News Channel interviews way back at the start, Candace Cooley said that Dylan Rounds contacted her about what happened on the 25th, and basically Dylan lied, saying that he didn't pick the crazy guy Chase Venstra up. He ignored him and drove off. The end. But obviously that isn't the case. As we know from what we've learned with time and what Candace Cooley learned herself, Dylan Rounds did pick up Chase Venstra and take him supposedly down to Montello, right? Picking up a stranger. Often a risky thing, but in that case, that's what Dylan did. But Dylan didn't want to tell Candace Cooley that side of the story in case he would get in trouble and Candace would get angry. And even Candace Cooley acknowledged that, speaking on behalf of Dylan Rounds' thought process. Does that make sense? So basically, at the time, Dylan Rounds lied directly to Candace Cooley, his mother, right? And that's where that pattern begins. If lies were made then by Dylan Rounds, what other lies have been made with time, more so in the past? Were there any lies financially? Did Dylan Rounds ever lie to Candace Cooley about money made or money owed? Makes you think. But then you've got to also understand with common sense, and we'll add it in now before we forget, if Candace Cooley was completely unaware of all this financial trouble, then what was going on in the background then when Candace Cooley was referring back to how when we looked at Dylan's bank accounts, when we looked into his accounts, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing strange going on, and even Candace Cooley herself saying in the interviews and re-clarifying stuff and setting the record straight about Dylan Rounds not owing any money to Kurt Wadsworth when that was coming about, that talk, and not owing Don Hatley any additional money because they parted ways at the time, Dylan and Don, in a neutral way. But Dylan Rounds was clean, no issues there, financially it was okay. That's what Candace Cooley has said. Now, would Candace Cooley be saying all that to make Dylan Rounds look like the golden boy, all clean, all good, all innocent? Or, you know, like because there's another reason going on? Like, making him appear as the golden boy because secretly Candace Cooley knows what Dylan Rounds has been up to. Not so much that it's really, really bad, but it could tarnish Dylan's reputation or tarnish Dylan's life, considering it came to an abrupt end. So it's best to remember Dylan for the good times, the positive moments, because of what's unfortunately happened to him, of course, but then maybe at the same time, the long-term aspect, Dylan's legacy, to keep that up. So by maybe just mentioning all the positive stuff and ignoring the negatives, because what good do the negatives do? It's true, in a way. What good does it do? What's done has been done. Dylan is no longer here. That's not good. People are sad. By adding in more negatives, how does that help? I get that. But by covering up potential things, if that was the case, if certain things that were covered up that could have played a role into Dylan's disappearance, or something leading up to that, then that's a problem, right? When it comes to trying to understand a case, you might have to look at the pros and the cons, the negatives. You might have to look at the background of that victim or of the family to understand the full story. And that could be, in a way, to some, an unpopular opinion, right? But at times it needs to be done. I've got experience when it comes to the Kenny Veach case. Although a lot of humans jump onto the mental health bandwagon of Kenny Veach supposedly being suicidal just because the girlfriend said so, people then feel sorry for Kenny Veach and only feel sorry for Kenny Veach. But then you got the other side who look at it a little bit deeper and notice, oh, family members, some of them have been involved and caught up in money-related issues, levels of corruption, one-sided, manipulative, dark, nasty behaviour. Same story told by the sister-in-law, Veach-related family member, coming from their mouth as well. That speaks volume, right? How Kenny Veach, influenced possibly by other family members with their behaviour, right, and how they were about with certain money-related stuff. Kenny Veach doing it himself, possibly, along that line and pattern. Even the spiritual aspect with brother, sister being involved in spirituality, Kenny Veach also being influenced possibly by that too. So you see how it can pass on throughout families, right? You can be influenced with the environment you're in. So you always got to look at it in that sense. Now, returning back to the situation with Dylan Rounds, it doesn't always have to be financial. It could be health-related reasons too. We'll get to that in a second. But returning back to the Candace Cooley and Dylan Rounds situation, right? If Dylan Rounds is in or was in financial problems, maybe he wanted to sort it out himself. He wanted to solve it himself. He was too proud, possibly, or felt maybe a bit embarrassed to tell his parents. Maybe, I don't know about Candace Cooley, but more Justin. There's a possibility that Dylan Rounds may have never talked about it to the parents, thinking or worrying that they would interpret it or see it as a failure, wasted opportunity, that the parents were right all along, that you shouldn't have gone down there and done it all by yourself, that you should have stuck around a bit longer and learnt the trade or learnt a few more life experiences in between. Maybe Dylan Rounds didn't want to be in a situation of "I told you so," that line used, maybe. That Dylan felt he was determined and focused, that he was capable of solving it himself, maybe. There's many different ways of looking at it, right? And that's where it comes in with that theory. The theory of Dylan Rounds lying, not telling the truth, keeping secrets from the family and maybe others, either because he thinks he's got it under control himself, or he may feel a bit embarrassed about it, or how the family might react if it was ever in an angry way. But did Dylan Rounds ever reach out to anybody else about certain stuff, right? You could be asking on the spot, if you have just joined all of a sudden, welcome, how would we even be in a situation like this to be talking about the possibilities of Dylan Rounds being in trouble in some way or another? Where did it all originate from? Well, just brief context from what some Montello locals have stated. Montello locals being local in the area where Dylan Rounds was roughly present at and worked at. Some Montello locals out there, one or two of which who have reached out to the odd key individuals which Dylan Rounds worked for at a point in time. So you get the idea of the pattern, how the information is passed on through, and how it's eventually received. So that's what we're basing it from. The originals that were in the presence of Dylan Rounds when Dylan Rounds was working. So money exchanged, conversations exchanged, and, you know, visually witnessing whatever happening at the time, okay? So that's like what we're basing it off. You can share your thoughts down below as well if you think Dylan Rounds was truly in a financial trouble. Was it intentional? Was it accidental? Mistakes made as he's trying to learn because of his age along the way. How should we do this poll right now? The poll right now, do you know what? I'm not going to actually announce polls in the video. I'll just type them in myself in the chat, so then it doesn't feel like I'm time gated between each one. So a bit more of a smoother flow. I think I'll take that into mind for the future as well if I do more videos like this, okay? So we've got the financial aspect, the element of Dylan Rounds lying, bending the truth, possibly keeping things a secret due to how other people may react. So if Candace Cooley isn't aware of these financial problems, fast forward to when Candace Cooley is talking about Dylan in memory of him, it's mainly only positives talked about because Candace Cooley doesn't know about the financial trouble. One way of looking at it. But the counterpoint to that, would be, well, from what Candace Cooley has said, is that she, took in, well, she assisted in some way financially, such as doing the invoices, adding up the cost, that type of stuff. Maybe it's not full control of the finances, but it's an area, it's an element. Recently heard talks about potentially Karen, the grandmother, playing a role as well in assisting or helping financially, either giving time, focus in looking after certain stuff, getting involved in some way to help Dylan. Because at the end of the day, Dylan Rounds at the time is of a youngish age, right? Not quite fully an adult at the time. Still learning as he goes along. Mistakes can be made, trying to learn at the same time, and family still do their part to assist Dylan in some way, right? It all makes sense, it's understandable. What I'm trying to say is, if there's a presence of family involving themselves, assisting and helping Dylan financially in some way or another, then maybe they would have a better idea of the situation with Dylan, or maybe they would be possibly more likely to know the financial situation Dylan Rounds is in. You get what I'm saying? One way of looking at it. The other point made by some people recently was, if it was on the condition that Dylan Rounds might have been a bit dodgy or corrupt, and Candace Cooley was as well, either both in it together, or there was a level of corruptness where Candace Cooley, because of owing people money, then leading to Dylan Rounds getting caught up in it and being the injured party taken out due to Candace Cooley's own previous past actions to the money issues. Although I may have said that's BS, that idea, that thought, some people left comments saying, realistically, if it was that messy and that some family members were caught up in it, which led to Dylan's death, then why would Candace Cooley be so public about everything and so verbal? Why not participate in the case to appear normal, as if you care, but not too vocal or verbal to then appear as a main talking point, a main feature? The more you talk, the more eyes turn your way, or should I say heads. And if you feel like you have done wrong now in the past, which may have led to Dylan's disappearance and death, then why involve yourself so much where it could make you a potential suspect for questioning by some down the line. You'd want to try and lay low, but still show that you care, so it appears normal, right? Kind of like what other people have done in the past. On a more serious scale, when you have heard about certain family members being involved in the death, disappearance of somebody, but never knew at the beginning, it was only much later on down the line when maybe true colours showed or they actually slipped up, but they weren't too verbal or they weren't too vocal. They didn't make themselves a figurehead of the case because it might make them look a bit suspicious in some way at a point in time, right? I can understand that level of reasoning, right? What would I say at the end of the day? If I had to do a little conclusion on the financial aspect with Dylan and Candace Cooley. I feel if Candace Cooley does owe people money or has screwed people over in the past, I don't think it would carry over this long in terms of the Dylan Rounds case when Brenner is involved himself, when Brenner isn't linked to people in the past, I believe, from what Candace Cooley may have done to people. I don't think there's any link there, so it wouldn't be really necessary. I say that Candace Cooley may have her own issues down the line, yeah, but may not link to Dylan. I feel if Dylan Rounds had financial issues himself, it probably doesn't directly link to Candace Cooley either. Then the next question would be, in conclusion, then who knows what's going on? Does Candace Cooley know about about Dylan's situation? Does Dylan Rounds know about Candace Cooley's past? You know, do they both know or do neither know? Or only one knows, right? And how significant is it to the disappearance of Dylan Rounds? As for the money aspect, okay, it has been talked about quite a bit in differing ways, whether it be the amount Dylan Rounds had at the time, in his hand, in his pocket, supposedly speaking, before people heard about the check. But then that kind of was dispelled, those ideas, because if Dylan had a check, it was cashed in, there's not much more another person can do about it, right? Unless there was physical money on him, which didn't seem to be the case from what Candace Cooley has said with time, right? And the likes of Brenner being the main suspect, the one charged, right? He wouldn't have benefited financially when he is where he is right now. Didn't work out for him if that was really the case, right? So there's that to acknowledge as well. But is it more so levels of keeping secrets? You could argue it could be, if it was, the theme of keeping secrets from one another. Candace Cooley having her own past, but Dylan Rounds not knowing about it, nor Candace Cooley opening up to Dylan. And then Dylan Rounds with his financial troubles, but not reaching out to Candace Cooley, or maybe just in either because of a certain reason, not wanting them to know, right? So each keeping secrets from one another, which at times is a normal thing to do in its own right, okay? Sometimes the more serious stuff needs to be talked about, but, you know, it's not always possible or easy to do. So I think the factor of keeping secrets from one another applies there when it comes to the financial part. What about the factor of Candace Cooley knowing regardless, the second theory, and covering for Dylan? Would that be the case? It would seem weird for Candace Cooley to cover for Dylan Rounds when what happened to Dylan Rounds was the outcome. I don't think it would make sense. If we're talking on a more casual basis that maybe Candace Cooley might know something about Dylan Rounds getting in trouble financially and people being owed money, maybe Candace Cooley could be a bit more understanding in a way if she's got a past herself. She might not be impressed with Dylan, but taking consideration everything that's happened to Dylan as well, the outcome, you probably can excuse it at that moment in time. I guess what you could ask yourself is, what happens down the line when, let's say, the case is solved and things move on eventually? Do things from the past end up being dug up? Not literally, but one's past financially. Will Dylan Round's name be dragged through the mud at a later point? If, suppose, people out there still haven't been paid, let's just say. Or will legal things take place in the background without anyone knowing public? You know, that's one area we've just looked at there, and I tried balancing it out, okay? Originally, I was actually just going to do one side all the way through, then the other, but it just bounces off from one another. It just effortlessly flows, right? So that's why I did it that way. Now, if we're not talking about the financial factors and we're talking about health-related issues, more so with Dylan Rounds, is it likely Dylan Rounds might have kept secrets from Candace Cooley? Possibly, and that's why Candace Cooley has never really recorded Dylan Rounds being ill. I think maybe in the past, the odd photo of Dylan Rounds, the one in Rigby in that kitchen area, not bent over, stood near the sink washing a dish or something, and people back then was hinting that Dylan looked ill, his face, skin colour, hair, muddy, dirty, hygiene lacking, and Candace Cooley, I think, responded to that and said, no, Dylan Rounds wasn't ill, he was healthy. Look, he tried looking after himself, but he would neglect things like leaving food on the side and maybe having dirty clothes because he's busy doing what he's doing. That was basically about it, what Candace Cooley said. Could well be the truth, but maybe only half the story. If Dylan Rounds didn't open up and say, oh, I'm feeling physically ill, or there's some issue going on, then how would the parents ever know, right? Why would Dylan Rounds lie once again? Maybe it's because he's doing the custom farm work on top of the contracts, on top of his own farm work and ideas and plans, being a bit overambitious but wanting to be successful and passionate about what he does, not wanting to be slowed down, not wanting, if in a case if he was ill, other people to know because then they would care, and by caring they may pull Dylan Rounds away from his farm work and say, hey, you need to go to the hospital, or hey, we need to look after you for a little bit. Kind of like that farming incident with Don Hatley, when Don was run over by a tractor or some kind of equipment, and then, need to rehabilitate himself. He was taken in by Larry Rounds, the grandfather, who became good friends with Don, and it went from there, but it meant he was out of work for a bit. So with Dylan Rounds, I don't think Dylan Rounds would want to be out of work. I think Dylan Rounds wants to work because he's passionate about it. And if there are any other underlying things, it might help him as well as a distraction. So by taking Dylan Rounds away from farming, he kind of loses his identity and he probably might feel a bit agitated. I want to keep on moving. I want to keep on going forwards, pushing forwards. And if Dylan can't do that, he's not going to feel too good about it. So if Dylan Rounds does feel at a point in time, if it was the case that he felt ill, he felt a little, like there was something wrong with him, but not ultra serious, he just wanted to push on. Because if he was honest, if he did open up to the family, it could lead to him being pulled away from his farm work, and I don't think he would want that, okay? Now, obviously, leading up to the death, could that illness have progressed if there was an illness to begin with? Could it have got worse? I don't know. But all I would say is, if there was an illness with Dylan, serious or not, it could have slightly led to him being a bit more vulnerable at the time of confronting Branagh, if it was a direct confrontation on the 28th of May 2022, okay? That's what I would personally say. Sometimes when you are ill, you're not quite feeling normal, you're not able to respond or act the same ways, you might be a bit slower in reflexes, your thoughts might be a bit slowed down, your brain might not be functioning quite the same, you might not be as mobile. It just depends what illness it is, right? And if it's physical or more psychological, right? Being mentally drained, not performing at the same standards, right? Could that possibly explain why Dylan Rounds only did a little bit of farm work at his own farm, 27th Friday, May 2022. I said that date in the wrong order, but you know what I'm talking about, the Friday, the night before Dylan was taken out. Was Dylan Rounds already ill then, or tired, just simply drained because of all what he's been doing, running about, fetching and carrying, ordering stuff, also trying to focus on his own farm work, right, on top of everything else he's doing? Makes you think. Going to bed obviously late at night because it was, it was 11:30 to 11:45 p.m. when that farm work went underway at Dylan's farm, presumably Dylan himself in the tractor, witnessed by those witnesses near Little Pigeon Mountain, right, camping over there. Then waking up 6 in the morning, roughly that, or a bit later. Enough sleep? Maybe, kind of, but it also depends what Dylan Rounds had been up to the days beforehand and before that, and his sleep patterns there, if it was disrupted or not, right? All these little factors can make someone possibly more vulnerable when in a situation of danger, right? You want to be at your best when facing danger head on, or you're not anticipating it, but you still want to be at your best for the better outcome, right? So you can see how it can link from that to Dylan's death, but not literally directly, okay? I mean, you could go deeper and say, Brenner, the way he snaps, his aggression levels, there could be something wrong with him in here, and it's gone on too long and he's constantly reoffended. Lost cause or not, I don't know. But we don't need to focus too much there with Brenner because this is about Dylan Rounds at the moment, okay? So we talked about the financial part, we talked about the physical part, psychological part, financial, yeah. Are there any other elements or aspects? What about getting in trouble with the law, getting in trouble with the police? Dylan Rounds, his friends, supposedly JD present, but then again, that was contested back and forth, which didn't make, or wasn't really helpful. But referring back to that breaking, serious, important, never seen before, out of this world news, which had nothing to do with Dylan Rounds' death, which had nothing to do with Dylan Rounds' disappearance. It was just more so the past of Dylan himself getting in trouble with the law, the police. But was it all on, was it all on Dylan? Was it all Dylan's fault? No, because it was his friends as well present. At the time, 2021 at some point, driving by, I guess down a highway or so. Where exactly? I personally can't remember, okay? Was it Montella, Nevada or something? They're driving by, Dylan being the driver, I believe, Dylan's friend being the passenger, and then a few other friends in the back or so, in possession of alcohol, but that wasn't the reason why they were pulled over. Supposedly pulled over because earlier on a drive, they chucked a can or two out the window, littering. Locals or passerbys saw it, reported it to the police, and then police followed up, okay, and caught up with the vehicle, pulled it over, first I think questioned the friend in the passenger seat, who supposedly was JD, but then that was later contested, which is a bit odd. And then Dylan Rounds got out the vehicle and then was interviewed, and supposedly his body language was a bit uncomfortable and he was a bit quiet as well. So could you suggest first time Dylan Rounds getting in trouble with the law, the police, do you think, or has he done it beforehand? If you've not really done bad things before, you may not know how to act or react when questioned, interrogated. When you're around the presence of authority police, you might feel a little bit uncomfortable, nervous. Nervous, which shows that you're guilty, but also nervous as in you've never been through this before. You don't know if it was a mistake, or, have I made a massive mistake? How could I do this? All the type of thoughts going on. Whereas if you have reoffended several times, you might become quite calm. Sometimes the more calm you are, the less suspicious you look, unless there's enough evidence on you to prove otherwise, right? But if Dylan Rounds appearing very nervous, maybe a little bit naive, could you argue that even though Dylan Rounds may have been farming a lot, may have kept away from people, not interacted as much as what other people would expect Dylan to do so, could you argue the times when Dylan Rounds did interact, the times Dylan Rounds did hang out with people, which is supposedly the normal thing to do, why did that seem like the one time when Dylan Rounds was worse off? You know what I'm saying? Whilst people can criticise Dylan Rounds for farming too much and being too passionate and focused on that, Well, if you take that away from Dylan, and then you put Dylan with Kurt Wadsworth, you got all kinds of theories and ideas of Dylan being groomed, ideas of Dylan being vulnerable in the presence of Kurt and bad things happening there, let's say. But then if you put that aside, okay, Dylan rounds with people of his own age, a bit more normal, as people would call it. Well, 2021, getting pulled over by police. Friends may have been also causing a bit of trouble. I can't remember exactly who was the one that threw the can out. You'd think either JD or one of Dylan's other friends, not Dylan himself if he's got his hands on the wheel. Bless me. Well, not bless me, because that's normally when you sneeze. Must be getting the blessings all mixed up. My signals, my chakras are broken. Oops, there we go. But, you know, you get the idea that it seems as if when Dylan Rounds is in the presence of people, he's actually worse off there and getting in more trouble there than farm work. Would you agree with that? I mean, if we're tying back in with the owing money scenario and in trouble financially, you could say that at the end of the day, maybe Dylan Rounds is just getting in trouble, getting into problems, life problems left, right, and centre, wherever he goes. Is that because of his age, growing up, making mistakes as you go along? Possibly. I mean, I know at the end of the day, humans can say, oh, we all make mistakes, we all do this and we all do that. No. Let's not all group ourselves together. Let's be realistic here. We can all make some form of mistakes. We can all make some form of slip-ups, but some of us are worse than others. Some of us make more mistakes than others. Some of us grow up quicker than others, you know, etc., etc. Let's not do the whole grouping idea, because that's like minimalising others and insulting the rest. He might be better off, or might be a bit more in control, or a little bit more sensible but boring. You know, do you get what I'm saying? So I feel there's possibilities that even though Dylan Rounds, when he was around people, it didn't turn him into a better person. Does that make sense? That farming was a thing that kept him grounded. It's kept him pushing forwards in the right direction in a positive way in general. You could suggest that, yeah. Is there any other themes, areas? Well, with Candace Cooley, once again, does Candace Cooley know about Dylan Rounds in 2021 getting in trouble with the police? Never mentioned in the case of Dylan or in Dylan's legacy. But I think this is the thing, okay, you got to think about it this way. Candace Cooley may not refer to Dylan about everything, right? More so in the past, because maybe Candace Cooley feels it's not relevant to this case. I can agree to an extent. Dylan Rounds getting in trouble with police in 2021 has no correlation or link to Dylan Rounds being killed in 2022, right? So Candace Cooley knows about what happened in 2021, and she's being interviewed in a case which happened in 2022, and they're two separate things. Candace is probably going to be talking about it. And also, Candace Cooley probably won't be talking about anything negative about Dylan personally from the past because of what's just happened in general, right, with Dylan. That's what I'd say. If Dylan Rounds never died and was found shortly after going missing, would the pros and cons be mentioned? The cons, the negatives of Dylan in the past? No, I don't think it still would be mentioned there. I mean, you could say there's a level of biasness, high biasness, but I think that's a normal thing. Once again, how, you know, family, if they care about their son or daughter, then they'll stick by them and say all kinds of positives, even in death, even if they have done bad stuff. I mean, on a more extreme scale, when you've had, like in the UK, person hit and run or armed robbery, took other people out, got taken out in the process, maybe for a collision with somebody, whatever. The family respond back, get the little vigils out, the little candles, lights and flowers, and honour their son or daughter who was the reason for bad things happening, but say all positives about them and no negatives. Very biased, but it's a normal thing to do at the same time, though outsiders wouldn't see it the same way or think it's normal. But, you know, you get what I'm saying? You're gonna... If you're friends with someone, even if a friend might be guilty, you're probably going to stand by them and maybe defend them to an extent, right? So it's kind of like that with family too. Obviously, it doesn't always happen, but it can. And maybe it's happened this time around in the Dylan Rounds case. But what about Justin Rounds? Is Justin Rounds in the same situation as Candace Cooley in terms of not knowing about certain stuff? Maybe more so. Because maybe Justin's personality, sometimes a bit of a strong attitude, although might not say a lot, sometimes not saying anything is a reaction itself. You know, not that it applies here. In other cases, people say that they dread it when someone they know doesn't shout, doesn't get angry, they just keep silent. That's when you know you really have disappointed someone and they hate that reaction from that individual. It can send many signals and messages by keeping silent and just looking with a blank face. Something like that, right? Does Dylan Rounds look to Justin more, to Candace Cooley, or is it the other way around? I don't really know. But as I said, we don't need to get too deep there. But if people have just suddenly joined, feel free to rewind back to fully understand. Basically, all we're doing here is like tying on with what we've learned in recent time about the backstory of Dylan and how it could have impacted or led to the following on the 28th, right? Partially. And along the same lines, whilst talking about Candace Cooley, did she know about some of this stuff, or was she in the dark and still is till this day? So when outsiders come out with information like this and Candace Cooley hears it, she's obviously going to reject it, push it away, because it's like, who do you think you are saying all this about my son? If Dylan Rounds was present till this day to clear the air himself, or maybe a friend of Dylan's, and set the record straight and acknowledge these things happening, then maybe Candace Cooley would be more likely to listen, right? It makes sense. Will that happen? Probably not. Is there anything else we need to really add in? Still to this day, there's that suspicion that Candace Cooley is dodgy, involved, what part of the reason to what happened to Dylan Rounds. But if that really was the case, why would Candace Cooley still be continuously spreading awareness in Dylan's name, right? Would people put the spin and twist on it and say the only reason why Candace Cooley is pushing it and being consistent, spreading awareness, helping other families is because she feels sorry? She made a mistake and now all she can do is by honouring Dylan and apologising just by keeping the case alive, keeping his name alive and saying lots of positive stuff about him. I don't know, it just seems a little bit far-fetched, that, okay? I just think and feel that if family or a family member was involved in all this, then they're probably likely to be more in the background, not as much action displayed or not as verbal about it. Does that make sense? As I explained earlier on in this video. I'd say that whilst there's been suspicion with Candace Cooley, there just hasn't been enough physical hard evidence to suggest it. That's what I would say. Do I have a negative outlook on Candace Cooley? Being honest, no. Do I think Candace Cooley is really, really dodgy? At this moment in time, no. The moments in the past where information has switched and changed, and she might have made a claim which was inaccurate, could have been accidental, and on top because being distracted by other things going on at the time, that was just more frustrating, and that was it. Okay? Maybe other people react more strongly to Candace Cooley's actions or lack of emotion or lack of actions, but I don't really, think that way. Okay? What about Justin? I mean, not seen much from Justin, so can't really say too much. I mean, I do think that maybe at the end of the day, more people are focused on Candace Cooley in a negative way than Justin, but I'm sure there's possibilities that Justin may have done the odd bad thing in the past, which has no link to Dylan's disappearance and maybe not relevant today as we speak now, but it's just worth spreading it out, right? If you're going to go after one person or question them or say they're suspicious or point out criticisms about them, you might as well do it with the other person as well, just to spread it out, okay? So it's a bit more balanced, but I don't think everyone does that, okay? Anything else to highlight? I think we'll leave it there for now, to be honest. I think in the mind I was thinking, could we go a bit deeper or a bit further, but maybe it was a bit shorter this time, but more smooth. Just glided back to back like butter knife. Okay, Betty, I would take notes, get the correct utensils out, okay, for your bakery. As well, if anyone's wondering or interested, Shack Lady did a live stream 5 days ago. Her new live stream, is she back for good? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. And in general, let me know your thoughts down below of this video. Did you learn something new? Have your opinions, thoughts, ideas changed since? Let me know. If you got grievances, leave that down below as well. We'll leave it there for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and maybe took notes yourself in general. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and good night.